The girl lived in a small home where mornings were quiet and familiar. She could tell the time without seeing a clock. The sound of birds outside the window told her when the day had fully begun. The smell of warm tea drifting from the kitchen told her that someone was awake before her. She had never seen the color of the sky or the shape of the trees, but she knew the world in other ways. She knew it through sound, touch, and feeling. She was born without sight. For her, darkness was not frightening because it was all she had ever known. What frightened people around her was the idea that a child so young might feel limited. But she did not see herself that way. She felt life deeply. Every sound mattered. Every voice carried meaning. Every small change in tone told her a story. Music entered her life before words did. As a baby, she calmed down when soft tunes played nearby. As she grew older, she leaned toward sounds that felt full and alive. A simple melody could make her smile. A slow tune could make her quiet. Music did not need eyes. It needed attention, and she had plenty of that. Her fingers were sensitive in a way that surprised adults. When she touched a surface, she did not rush. She explored it slowly, carefully. That same patience showed when she began touching musical instruments. The first time she felt the smooth wood and strings beneath her hands, she paused. She listened to the vibration. She smiled, as if she had found something she had been missing without knowing it. Practice did not come easily. She made mistakes. Her hands slipped. Sounds came out wrong. But she did not stop. When something sounded off, she listened again. She adjusted. She tried once more. She was not trying to impress anyone. She was simply trying to understand the sound. Her family noticed early on that music gave her confidence. When she played, her shoulders relaxed. Her breathing slowed. The world around her seemed to fade, leaving only rhythm and tone. Even on hard days, music made space for calm. Outside the home, life was not always gentle. People spoke softly around her, as if softness alone could protect her. Others assumed she could not do much on her own. Some meant well, but their pity felt heavy. She sensed it in their voices. She heard it in the pauses before they spoke. It made her feel smaller, even though no one said those words out loud. Music became her way of pushing back against that feeling. When she played, she was not a child people felt sorry for. She was simply someone creating sound. Someone expressing something real. Her teacher noticed this too. Not the first teacher she met, but one who truly listened. This teacher did not rush her or lower expectations. Instead, the teacher spoke clearly and waited patiently. Mistakes were corrected gently, not avoided. Progress was slow, but it was honest. Every lesson ended the same way. The girl would sit quietly for a moment after playing. She would ask how it sounded. Not if it was good or bad, but how it felt. She wanted to know if the sound reached the listener. That mattered more to her than applause. As months passed, her skill grew. Her sense of timing became steady. Her touch became confident. She began to feel music instead of counting notes. When she played, her body moved slightly with the sound, as if she were part of it. At home, evenings often ended with small performances. Family members would sit nearby, not speaking, just listening. Sometimes someone cried quietly, not because the music was sad, but because it was honest, carried something deeper than age. Still, the world outside remained distant. Big stages and large crowds were not part of her life. She did not dream of fame. She did not imagine bright lights or loud cheers. Her dreams were simpler. She wanted to play well. She wanted people to feel something when they listened. One day, an opportunity appeared, quietly at first. A small event where music would be shared. Nothing grand, just a chance to perform in front of others. When it was suggested that she play, there was hesitation. People wondered if it would be too much, too overwhelming, too risky. She listened as adults discussed it around her. She did not interrupt. When they finally asked her how she felt, she answered simply. She said she wanted to try. Her voice was calm. There was no fear in it. Preparation began slowly. She practiced more often but without pressure. She learned the space through sound. She counted steps. She memorized where things would be. For her, knowing the space mattered more than seeing it. As the day approached, her routine stayed the same. She woke up to the same birds. She practiced the same way. She did not talk about nerves because she did not feel them. Music had never betrayed her before. What she did not know was who might be listening. She did not know how many people would be there. She did not know that someone known around the world would be present. That detail was not important to her. To her, it was just another chance to play. The night before the performance, she sat quietly after practice. Her hands rested in her lap. Someone asked if she was excited. She thought for a moment before answering. She said she was ready. Not excited. Not scared. Just ready. She went to sleep listening to the hum of the house. The soft sounds of footsteps. The distant noise of traffic. All of it blended together like a low melody. Her mind replayed the music she would play, not as notes, but as feeling. Morning came gently. She dressed with help, her fingers recognizing familiar fabric. She ate slowly. She spoke little. Not because she was nervous, but because she was focused. When they arrived at the venue, new sounds filled the air. Echoes, voices, footsteps that did not belong to people she knew. She paused, listening carefully. She built the space in her mind piece by piece. Someone guided her hand to a familiar surface. She recognized it immediately. The instrument was there, solid, waiting. Her fingers rested on it, and she felt calm. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know how the audience would react. She did not know that this moment would change her life. All she knew was the music, and that was enough. The day of the performance arrived quietly, almost like a soft whisper that no one could ignore. She woke up early, not because she was nervous, but because her body had a rhythm all its own. Her hands itched to feel the strings, to hear the vibrations that spoke more than words ever could. She dressed carefully, feeling the fabric, the buttons, and the folds. Every movement was familiar, every touch deliberate. She had done this before many times in practice, but never in front of strangers. The idea of a crowd did not frighten her. It simply meant there were more people to listen. That thought made her smile, a small curve of lips that spoke of quiet excitement. As she left home, the air outside was crisp and alive. She could hear leaves rustling under shoes, dogs barking far in the distance, and the soft hum of early traffic. She walked slowly, taking each step with care, guided by the hand of someone she trusted. Even without sight, she felt the world fully. Each sound gave her direction. Each vibration under her feet told her where she was. The venue was large, though she could not see it. The echoes told her everything she needed to know. Steps reverberated off the walls, and voices bounced softly from far corners. She could sense the space. She reached the stage area, guided carefully to where she would perform. Her fingers brushed over the instrument she would play, feeling its familiar curves, its smooth wood, and the taut strings. It welcomed her touch as always. People began to arrive. She could hear the shifting of chairs, the murmur of voices, the soft shuffle of feet on the floor. It was a sound unlike the quiet of her home. The voices carried curiosity, excitement, and perhaps a little doubt. They whispered about a young blind girl who would perform. She did not mind the whispers. She could not see them anyway, but she listened, and she could hear the undercurrent of hope that accompanied them. Her family stayed close, standing just behind her. Their hands were gentle on her shoulders, a quiet reassurance. They did not speak much. They simply let her breathe in the sounds around her and focus on the music inside her. She had been practicing for weeks, but this moment felt different. Not harder, not easier, different. Carried a weight she could not yet name. A few steps away, a man she did not know approached. His voice was warm and kind. He spoke in a way that was careful but not overly cautious. She recognized the respect in his tone immediately. He did not treat her as fragile or incapable. He treated her as someone important, someone with a voice worth hearing. She listened to his words, nodded slightly, and focused back on her instrument. The lights went up. She could not see them, but she felt the change in the air. The room grew still, almost holding its breath. Every shuffle stopped, every whisper faded, leaving only the hum of anticipation. She adjusted her fingers on the strings, feeling the tension, the familiar weight of the instrument. She inhaled slowly. Then she began. The first notes were soft, deliberate, and careful. She felt the vibrations travel up her arms, through her hands, and into the space around her. The music spread, slow at first, building with each touch. The audience listened in silence. She could sense them leaning forward, straining to hear what could not be fully seen. She was not trying to impress them. She was simply expressing what she felt. Every note carried intention. Every pause carried meaning. As the music continued, something remarkable happened. The room changed. The echoes of the space no longer felt empty. They joined her in the music. The murmurs of the audience became part of the rhythm. She could sense their emotions in the way the sound moved through the room. Some leaned in closer, some closed their eyes, and some simply sat quietly, letting the melody wash over them. Her hands moved confidently now, guided by memory and feeling. She had practiced this piece countless times, but she was not repeating it mechanically. Each note was alive, breathing with the space around her. She could feel the subtle shifts in air, the small vibrations from the floor, and even the soft murmur of a cough from somewhere far in the back. Every sound became part of her performance, every vibration a signal that she was reaching someone. Someone near the front made a small gasp. She did not pause. She continued, allowing the music to flow naturally. It was not about perfection. It was about presence. She had learned that early on. The room seemed to listen differently now, as if it recognized something rare, something honest, something that could not be measured or judged but only felt. From her position on stage, she could sense the eyes of the crowd on her, even if she could not see them. She felt the tension in the room shift, the curiosity turn into admiration. Some held their breath, waiting to see what came next. Some had tears quietly rolling down their cheeks, moved by the sound. She did not need to see it to know it. She could feel it in the vibrations of the floor, the shifts in the air, the tiny sounds that indicated presence and attention. Every note became easier, more confident. She had expected some difficulty, some stumble, but it did not come. Her body remembered the rhythm. Her hands remembered the touch, and her heart remembered the emotion. The music flowed naturally, like a conversation between her and the unseen audience. She could hear the subtle changes in their breathing, the quiet sighs, the small movements that meant they were connected. A pause came in the music, a long, quiet moment where she rested her fingers on the strings without pressing down. She felt the energy in the room, the anticipation, and allowed it to fill her. Then she began again, slower at first, letting the sound grow naturally. It rose, carrying emotion, carrying joy, carrying something that could not be put into words. Somewhere in the crowd, a man known to millions was watching. He had seen countless performances, heard incredible talent, and experienced moments that many would never witness. Yet something about this music caught his attention in a way that was immediate and undeniable. He did not speak. He did not move. He simply listened. And as he listened, a change appeared in him, subtle at first, then unmistakable. His expression softened, his posture shifted, and he leaned forward ever so slightly. He was moved, deeply moved. The audience could sense the change as well. They had come with curiosity, perhaps some doubt, and they were leaving with a feeling that was hard to describe. Respect, admiration, wonder. It all flowed quietly, naturally, without fanfare or applause. They were witnessing something rare, something that could not be replicated or rehearsed. The girl felt it too, even though she did not know exactly what was happening. She felt the shift in the air, the energy in the room, the subtle vibrations that indicated connection. She felt the way her music was touching others, and it gave her strength. She did not need approval. She needed presence. She had it, and that was enough. Time seemed to stretch and shrink all at once. The music moved fluidly, each note carrying the weight of emotion she had practiced for so long. She had never been on a stage this big, never in front of a crowd this large, but she played as if she had been doing this all her life. Her fingers flew across the strings, but she never lost control. Her body swayed slightly with the rhythm, guided by feeling, not sight. The first part of her performance ended. She lifted her hands slightly, listening to the silence that followed. The room was still, not from fear, not from uncertainty, but from reverence. People were processing what they had heard, what they had felt. Her heart beat steadily, not from nervousness, but from focus. She had given everything she could give, and it was enough. Someone stepped forward to guide her, but she barely needed it. She knew the space now. She felt the instrument beneath her fingers, the vibrations under her feet, the presence of people around her. She felt the energy of connection. She had stepped onto the stage as a girl who played music, and she had become someone who moved hearts without words, without sight, without hesitation. The next part of the performance awaited, and with it, a response that would ripple far beyond the walls of that room. But in this moment, she allowed herself a brief pause, a deep breath, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had shared something real, something honest, something alive. She did not see the faces. She did not need to. She could feel the admiration, the surprise, the emotion that spread quietly, invisibly, through the audience. And as she prepared to continue, a small smile crossed her face. The music had done its work. She had done her part. The rest would unfold naturally, just as it always did. And in the quiet before the next note, she felt it. The connection, the recognition, the beginning of something extraordinary. The music began again, flowing from her fingers with a quiet strength. She had already felt the room, already sensed the attention of everyone present. Now she allowed herself to play with confidence. Each note carried meaning, each vibration carried emotion. She did not need to see the audience to know how her music was landing. The reactions were subtle but clear. Footsteps shifted slightly, breaths became quieter, and the soft hum of anticipation wrapped around the space. Her fingers moved across the instrument with grace, finding rhythms she had only imagined in practice. The melody was not perfect in the mechanical sense, but it was alive, breathing with every motion she made. The audience, who had come with curiosity and doubt, began to settle into the music. Some closed their eyes, allowing the sound to take them somewhere else. Others leaned forward slightly, listening as if the music carried secrets they had never known. She could feel it. She could sense it. Every sound in the room seemed to respond to her. The vibrations from the floor traveled into her feet. The faint rustle of fabric on chairs accompanied the rhythm, and even the distant hum of traffic outside seemed to synchronize with the melody she created. She did not think of the performance as being for the audience or for herself. It was something larger, something that existed in the space between them. At one point, she paused for a brief moment, letting her hands rest lightly on the instrument. She listened to the silence that followed. It was not empty. It was full of expectation, full of emotion. She felt the pulse of the room, the subtle movements of people leaning closer or holding their breath. The silence was part of the performance, part of the story the music was telling. She allowed it to linger just long enough before continuing. The notes grew stronger, richer, and more complex. She had practiced this section countless times, yet each time felt unique. The vibrations beneath her fingers carried memories of every practice session, every quiet evening at home, every moment of joy and frustration. It all came together in this one performance, in this one space. She felt it not as pressure but as freedom. Somewhere in the audience, someone she had never met was watching closely. He had seen hundreds of performances, perhaps even thousands. He had heard musicians of every level and age. Yet something about this girl's music stopped him. He did not clap, did not speak, did not move. He simply listened, leaning slightly forward as if trying to absorb every vibration. The music affected him in a way that was immediate and profound. It was more than skill. It was emotion, honesty, and depth all at once. The audience began to respond in ways that were subtle but unmistakable. A quiet intake of breath here, a gentle sigh there, a movement almost imperceptible that showed the music had reached them. She could sense it through the vibrations in the floor and the air around her. She had always known music could communicate without words, and now she saw proof of it in real time. Her fingers danced across the strings with confidence and precision. The rhythm was steady, the melody flowing naturally. She had never been nervous, only focused, and that focus allowed the music to move freely. Each note carried intention, each chord carried meaning. She played not to impress, not to prove anything, but to express something that words could not convey. The audience was caught in a collective experience. Some closed their eyes and allowed themselves to be carried away. Some were silent, absorbing every note. Some whispered softly to each other, unable to contain their amazement. It was as if the room itself had transformed into an instrument, responding to her touch. She could not see it, but she could feel it, and it gave her energy to continue. A particularly difficult section approached, one that required technical skill and emotional control. She had practiced it countless times, yet she treated it as if encountering it for the first time. Her hands moved with intention, guided by memory but filled with life. The notes were clear, precise, yet full of feeling. Each vibration traveled through the room, carrying the story she had prepared to tell. She noticed subtle changes in the air. People shifted in their seats, leaned in slightly, and held their breath. The music had captured them. She could feel the energy building, and it gave her strength. She was no longer just playing. She was sharing, connecting, and leading everyone in the room through an emotional journey. Somewhere near the front, a man known for his sensitivity to music leaned closer. His eyes, though not seen by her, were fixed on her hands, on the way she moved with the instrument. He had expected talent, perhaps even skill, but not this. Not the depth, the presence, the honesty. He had never seen a child convey emotion in this way, and yet here it was, undeniable and breathtaking. The music took on a life of its own. She played not to finish, not to perform, but to let the story unfold naturally. Each note flowed into the next, each chord built upon the one before. The audience was no longer separate from the performance. They were part of it. She could sense their emotions as clearly as the vibrations in her fingers. A hush fell over the room during a particularly delicate passage. Every note seemed to stretch into the air, every pause holding more weight than sound itself. People listened as if afraid to break the spell. The girl did not notice the silence, only the connection. She played with her heart, and the room responded in kind. Her hands moved faster now, yet with control. The music was no longer just her own. It belonged to everyone present. Every vibration traveled through the floor, through the walls, into the hearts of the listeners. Some began to smile quietly, some closed their eyes, and some simply sat in awe. She did not see them, but she felt them. The energy in the room continued to build. The music became a bridge between her world and theirs, a bridge made not of sight but of sound and feeling. Each note carried intention, each pause carried emotion. She played with precision but also with soul. It was impossible to separate skill from feeling, for they existed together in perfect balance. Near the end of the piece, she slowed down slightly, letting the final notes linger. The vibrations were soft now, gentle, but full of meaning. She could feel the shift in the room, the way people exhaled collectively, the quiet realization that something extraordinary had just happened. She had expected to finish, to receive acknowledgement, but what came was deeper than applause. It was connection, understanding, and admiration, all silent but powerful. She lifted her hands slightly from the instrument, letting the final resonance fade naturally. There was a pause, a quiet moment where the room held its breath. She listened carefully, feeling the vibrations in the air, the subtle sounds of movement, the small signs that the audience was processing what they had experienced. It was a sacred silence, full of respect and awe. Then she heard it. A soft intake of breath, a small murmur, followed by another. The audience was reacting, not in a sudden outburst, but in a gentle acknowledgement of the music and the performer. She felt a wave of satisfaction, not from approval, but from knowing that she had communicated something real. The man near the front shifted slightly, his eyes wide with emotion. His reaction was visible even from afar, and though she could not see it, she felt it in the air. The connection was complete. She had shared her music, her emotion, and her story, and it had reached someone who truly understood. As she prepared to step back for a brief pause before continuing, she allowed herself a small smile. She had come onto the stage as a young blind girl with an instrument, and now she had become a storyteller, a messenger of emotion, and a bridge between the unseen and the audience. She did not yet know that this moment would be remembered far beyond the room, that her performance would be shared, watched, and admired by millions. All she knew was the music, the vibrations, and the connection she felt with the people in the room. And in that connection, she found everything she had ever sought: understanding, presence, and the quiet power of sound to touch hearts without a single word. The music had carried her through the first part of the performance, and now the room seemed to hold its breath. She could feel it in the vibrations beneath her feet, the subtle shifts in air, the quiet movements of the audience. The piece was entering its most emotional section, one that demanded not only skill but presence, understanding, and the ability to make every note matter. She adjusted her hands on the instrument, feeling the strings beneath her fingers, their tension familiar and reassuring. From somewhere near the front, she sensed a presence that was different from the rest. He had been watching quietly, leaning slightly forward, fully absorbed in her performance. She did not know who he was, but she could feel his attention as something tangible, carried weight, respect, and curiosity. He did not fidget, he did not whisper. He simply observed, letting the music reach him fully. She began the next sequence, a melody that required delicate precision. Her fingers moved lightly but confidently, coaxing emotion from each string. The notes rose and fell like a conversation, gentle but commanding. The room seemed to respond to her, every quiet breath, every subtle shift of posture a reflection of the music's effect. She felt it, even without seeing it. Then something remarkable happened. The man near the front reacted visibly. He leaned in closer, his eyes widening in awe. His posture, usually controlled and composed, softened. His hands rested lightly on his knees, still but alert. The music had caught him in a way that no casual performance could. She did not know it yet, but he was someone who had seen countless musicians, someone who had experienced extraordinary talent many times. Yet here, in this quiet room, he was completely captivated by a 9-year-old girl he could not see. The audience, sensing the shift in energy, began to change as well. They had been listening with curiosity, admiration, and some surprise. Now, they leaned in, silent but attentive, as if the music had created a shared understanding between all of them. She could feel it in the room. The subtle vibrations of attention and emotion merged with the music she played, creating something that transcended sound. Her fingers moved more freely now. The confidence she had gained in practice and previous performances carried her through complex passages. She did not rush, she did not falter. Every note had intention, every pause had meaning. She was no longer just playing. She was speaking through music, telling a story that no words could capture. The man's reaction grew more noticeable. He tilted his head slightly, listening intently to every vibration. At times, his breath caught subtly, as if the music had touched him in a deeply personal way. He did not clap, he did not speak, but his presence alone was a signal to the audience that something extraordinary was happening. People began to mirror his attention. They followed his focus, leaned forward, and listened with reverence. She could feel the emotion in the room rising. Each note carried deeper resonance. Each chord had more weight. The performance was no longer about her alone. It was about the shared experience of the room, the way music could connect hearts without sight, without words, without any visual confirmation. She was the conduit, but the audience was part of the creation. Her hands danced across the instrument, moving with purpose, with intention, and with feeling. She had practiced these sequences countless times, yet each moment felt alive, different, unique. The energy of the audience, the response of the room, and the subtle presence of the man near the front added layers she had never experienced in practice. She was responding to them as much as they were responding to her. Then she reached the section she had feared the most. It was delicate, complex, and required both emotional depth and technical skill. She took a deep breath, though she did not need to see anything to prepare herself. She had trained her mind and body to anticipate the vibrations, the tension, and the movement. Her fingers moved with certainty, guided by muscle memory and intuition, producing notes that were both precise and alive. The audience remained silent, utterly absorbed. Some leaned forward, some closed their eyes, some whispered softly to themselves. The man in front sat almost motionless, but the intensity in his expression was undeniable. His reaction was no longer subtle. He was clearly moved, deeply moved, and yet he did not interrupt, did not speak, did not offer applause prematurely. He simply allowed the music to flow through him, fully present. She did not notice him directly, but she could feel the effect of his focus. It added energy, a sort of invisible encouragement that propelled her forward. She continued, letting the music rise and fall naturally, as it had in her imagination so many times before. But now the reality was richer, deeper, more profound. The music carried her, but it also carried the emotions of everyone in the room, blending into a shared experience that was impossible to describe. Her performance reached its peak. Notes cascaded from her fingers like water flowing over rocks, fluid and strong, yet gentle. Every vibration traveled into the room, touching hearts, stirring emotions, creating a connection that transcended age, experience, and even sight. People were moved silently, some holding back tears, others simply breathing slowly, savoring the moment. Then came the final phrase, delicate, precise, and full of meaning. She slowed her hands slightly, letting the notes linger, resonating naturally. The room remained silent, held in awe by the beauty, the honesty, and the emotion of the performance. Even in the stillness, she could feel the impact she had made. The music had spoken louder than words could, and the audience had heard it clearly. The man near the front finally responded. He leaned back slightly, exhaled, and a small smile appeared on his face. There was admiration, wonder, and respect in his expression. The audience followed, some letting out soft applause, some whispering quietly, but all acknowledging the extraordinary nature of what they had just witnessed. She could feel the vibrations of hands clapping, the subtle movements of recognition, and the wave of emotion that swept through the room. She lifted her hands from the instrument, letting the final resonance fade completely. The silence that followed was filled with understanding, awe, and respect. She did not see the reactions, but she felt them as clearly as if she could. The room had witnessed something rare, something beyond mere talent. It was connection, emotion, honesty, and the power of music to communicate across barriers. Her family, standing nearby, felt the change too. They were proud, of course, but more than that, they were in awe of how fully she had communicated through sound alone. They could see the subtle shifts in the audience, the admiration, and the respect. It was a moment they would remember forever, not because of fame or recognition, but because of the raw, undeniable impact of her music. She allowed herself a brief pause, breathing slowly, feeling the energy of the room, and the vibrations that remained. She had played from her heart, shared her story, and touched others in ways she could never have imagined. The music had done more than entertain. It had connected, inspired, and created a memory that would linger far longer than any single note. And then, as she prepared for the final section of the performance, she felt it. A shift in energy, a presence that was no longer just the audience, but someone whose reaction would become part of the story of this performance. She did not know yet how much impact her music would have, but she felt that something extraordinary was unfolding, and that her journey, her talent, and her courage had reached a point that few would ever experience. She took a deep breath, adjusted her hands, and let the music flow once more, carrying emotion, connection, and the power of human expression into every corner of the room. The final notes of the performance hung in the air, soft and alive, slowly fading into silence. She lifted her hands from the instrument and let the vibrations die naturally. The room stayed quiet for a few moments, as if no one wanted to disturb the fragile, beautiful feeling that lingered. Then, slowly, people began to respond. The applause started softly, quietly at first, then grew louder as the realization of what they had witnessed sank in. It was not a polite clapping. It was admiration, awe, and deep respect. She felt the vibrations of the applause, the subtle shift in energy around her. She could not see the faces, but she knew she had moved the room. Her heart swelled, not from pride, but from the connection she had created. Every note she had played had reached someone in a way words never could. She felt it in the trembling of the floor beneath her, the rustle of hands clapping, and the collective energy of people who had experienced something rare and extraordinary. Her family rushed forward, hugging her tightly, their pride obvious in every movement. They did not speak much. Their faces told the story of admiration and joy. They had watched her grow with music, known her struggles and her perseverance, and now the world seemed to notice too. But it was more than recognition. They felt the power of what she had created in that moment. From the front, the man she had sensed earlier rose slightly. He was not someone who clapped impulsively. He had watched carefully, listened deeply, and now he gave the girl the acknowledgement she had earned. His expression was filled with emotion, something between awe, admiration, and something more difficult to describe. She could feel it as clearly as if he were standing right beside her. The recognition was profound, and it rippled through the audience. The audience began to cheer, some standing, some clapping longer than usual, some whispering quietly to each other. The energy was alive, tangible, almost vibrating in the air. The girl had not performed for this reaction. She had performed for the music, for the story she wanted to tell. Yet, here it was, the acknowledgement of her talent and her courage. The room was alive with emotion, and she could feel every bit of it. Later, the story of her performance began to spread. A video was recorded quietly at first, but soon it was shared online. People watched it, first hundreds, then thousands, then millions. Everyone seemed to pause, captivated by the music, the courage, and the presence of a 9-year-old blind girl who played with the skill and emotion of someone far beyond her age. Comments poured in, not just about her skill, but about her heart, her connection to the music, and the way she touched everyone who listened. The girl did not know about this at first. She only knew the performance, the music, and the applause in the room. She only knew the way the vibrations of admiration had reached her hands and heart. She only knew that she had shared something deeply personal, and that it had been received in a way that was honest and pure. That was all that mattered. Her family watched the growth of the story online, seeing the reactions from around the world. They were proud, yes, but also amazed at how something so simple, a performance from the heart, could reach so many people. They saw people moved to tears, inspired to play music themselves, or simply reminded of the power of connection and emotion. It was more than they could have imagined. She continued to practice, to play, and to learn. The performance had opened doors. Yes, but it had also deepened her love for music. She realized that the applause, the recognition, and the sharing of her performance were not the most important part. The most important part was the music itself, the way it could connect people, and the way it allowed her to express what words could not. Months passed, and she played more often in front of small groups and larger audiences. Each performance carried the same focus, the same attention to feeling, and the same connection to her audience. She knew that music was not about fame or recognition. It was about the hearts it touched, the feelings it stirred, and the moments it created. People continued to talk about that day, about the performance that had seemed so simple yet carried something extraordinary. They talked about the courage of a young girl who did not let blindness define her limits, who played with heart and presence, and who reminded everyone that talent and emotion are not measured by age or sight. Her story became an inspiration to many, proof that dedication, passion and honesty can create moments that last far longer than the applause. Her teacher watched proudly as well, remembering the early lessons, the quiet determination, and the patience that had built this skill. She had seen talent, yes, but more importantly, she had seen heart. And now the world could see it too. The girl herself remained humble. She did not think of herself as famous or extraordinary. She thought of herself as someone who loved music, someone who wanted to share it, and someone who had been given a chance to touch hearts. She continued to play every day, practicing as she always had, listening carefully, feeling deeply, and letting the music speak for her. Even as the videos went viral and people from around the world reacted to her performance, she remained grounded. She did not let attention change her focus. The music was still the center of her world, and she approached it with the same care and love she always had. Each note was still deliberate, each pause still meaningful, each performance still a conversation with the audience, even if it was a room of strangers or millions of people online. The impact of that day continued to ripple outward. People shared the story with friends and family. Musicians, teachers, and children were inspired. Conversations started about talent, courage, and the ability to connect beyond limitations. The girl's performance became more than a single moment. It became a symbol of hope, persistence, and the transformative power of music. She received letters, messages, and kind words from people she would never meet. They spoke of how the music made them feel, how it reminded them to pursue their passions, and how it proved that limitations are often only in the mind. Each message added to the realization that her music had a reach far beyond the stage. She had connected not only with those who were physically present, but with people across the world who could feel the emotion she had shared. Through it all, she remained the same person she had been before the performance. She loved the quiet moments of practice, the soft hum of strings under her fingers, and the way music allowed her to express herself. Fame, recognition, and applause were new experiences. Yes, but they did not change who she was. She still woke up to the sound of birds, still practiced carefully, still felt the world through sound and touch. One day, someone asked her how she felt about all the attention. She thought for a moment, fingers tracing the instrument lightly, and then smiled. She said it was not about attention, not about recognition. It was about the music, the connection, and the joy of sharing something real. That simple answer captured the essence of why she played. Her journey continued, filled with practice, small performances, and moments of deep connection. The viral video remained a milestone, but it was only a part of her story. The story was about courage, love for music, perseverance, and the ability to touch hearts without words or sight. It was about how a 9-year-old girl could show the world that limitations are only what we make of them, and that true expression comes from within. André Rieu's reaction, captured in that moment, became part of the story as well. He had been moved by her performance, showing the world that even the most experienced and accomplished musicians could be inspired by genuine talent and heartfelt expression. His acknowledgement was not the goal, but it highlighted the impact her music had on everyone present. In the months and years that followed, her story continued to inspire. Teachers used it as an example of perseverance and talent. Musicians saw it as proof that emotion is more important than perfection. Children saw it as hope, showing that even if the world tells them no, they can still find their voice. And she herself continued to play, always focused on the music, always feeling, always connecting. The day she performed in that room became a memory she cherished, not for the applause, not for the attention, but for the quiet understanding that music had the power to move people, to bridge gaps, and to create moments that could never be forgotten. It reminded her, and everyone who heard her story, that talent, courage, and heart are what truly matter in the world. And so, she continued her journey, not defined by a single performance, not carried away by viral fame, but grounded in the music she loved, the connections she made, and the endless possibilities that lay in every note she played. The world had noticed, yes, but she had always known the most important audience was the music itself, and in it, she had found her voice, her purpose, and her joy.